Hey guys, how are you? Paul here. Sorry it's been so long since I've seen you, but I've been in a real input mode. You know, my life tends to go input and then output, and there seems to be no in between really. When I'm in input mode, I don't really put out a lot, and vice versa. So sorry about that. But right now, I want to tell you about some things that I'm discovering, some breakthroughs that I'm making that may help you in your normal life in terms of what I'm doing in terms of my input right now, which is I am really concentrating hard on my Spanish right now because I'm going to be spending some time in Mexico, which is very exciting, and I want to be able to converse as fast as possible and kind of assimilate into the culture more than just being a tourist there. And so I've been working very hard on my Spanish. And what I started running across is certain vocabulary words just do not stick. You know, there are many cognates in Spanish to English, which means there are many words that sound like they do in English, and the definition just comes to you very easily. And then there are other words that don't sound like what they are. It's like borrar, for instance, right? Or aprender, right? Borrar means to erase, and aprender means to learn. And for some reason, those two were real problems for me. And there are lots of others that I run across where I think, oh, what is that? What is that word? I'm sure you've had a similar experience. I even have that happen to me in English sometimes where I really want to use a word, but it just will not come. And so I started researching memory a little bit because I've never felt like I've had a very good memory. And I kind of went down the YouTube rabbit hole one night, and I came across the method of Loci, which is, I had heard about before. Maybe you've heard about it, talked about as a memory palace or a memory journey or a mind palace. This was featured in Sherlock a few years ago. He went into his mind palace and would pick out information, how to survive a gunshot wound and things like that he had stored in a certain place in his memory. Well, this is a real technique that was developed by the Greeks and then lost for a long time and then sort of revived in the 60s. And now, with memory championships and things like that happening, this method has regained popularity, and there are systems that are built on top of it that have improved it and allow people to memorize deck order of cards, having only seen them once for 30 seconds, and all kinds of binary numbers and crazy things like that, right? So I started using this method to remember Spanish vocabulary, and I have to say it's fantastic. Now, there's lots of videos on YouTube. Here's briefly how it works. What you do is you select a location that you know very well, say your apartment or your house or whatever that is. And then you map out locations in that space, and then you assign a word or something you want to remember to those locations within your space. Now, when you assign that word there or what you want to remember, you want to make it as outrageous as possible. You want to make it big, you want to make it loud, you want to make it colorful, and you want to involve a lot of motion in there. And you want to make it ridiculous if possible, or slightly saucy, either one. Nobody needs to know what's going on in your head and how you recalled that. The important thing is that you recall it to begin with, right? So I had never done any of this 5 days ago. 5 days ago, I had never done any of this. So I'm going to do a demonstration for you right now, and hopefully I'll make it through without making any mistakes. This morning, I started to memorize the best pictures and the Oscars from Wings, which is the very first one, to The Shape of Water, which just won the Academy Award this year. So I'm going to blindfold myself, and I'm going to go ahead and recite those all the way through, and we'll see if I can get through them using the method of loci, okay? So if you want to pull up a list of the Academy Award winners on Wikipedia there right now and pause this video and check me out on it, now would be a good time to do it. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do it blindfolded so I'm not looking at a list. And we're starting with the very first Academy Award winner, Wings, back in the 20s. And we're going all the way to 2017. So, are you ready? Here we go. So, we have Wings, the Broadway Melody, the All Quiet on the Western Front, Cimarron, the Grand Hotel, Cavalcade, It Happened One Night, Mutiny on the Bounty, The Great Ziegfeld, The Life of Emile Zola, You Can't Take It With You, Gone with the Wind, Rebecca, How Green Was My Valley, Mrs. Miniver, Casablanca, Going My Way, The Lost Weekend, The Best Years of Our Lives, Gentleman's Agreement, Hamlet, All the King's Men, All About Eve, An American in Paris, The Greatest Show on Earth, From Here to Eternity, On the Waterfront, Marty, Around the World in 80 Days, The Bridge on the River Kwai, Gigi, Ben-Hur, The Apartment, West Side Story, Lawrence of Arabia, Tom Jones, My Fair Lady, The Sound of Music, A Man for All Seasons, In the Heat of the Night, Oliver, In the Heat of the Night, Oliver, Midnight Cowboy, Patton, The French Connection, The Godfather, The Sting, The Godfather Part 2, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Rocky, Annie Hall, The Deer Hunter, Kramer versus Kramer, Ordinary People, Chariots of Fire, Gandhi, Terms of Endearment, Amadeus, Out of Africa, Platoon, The Last Emperor, Rain Man, Driving Miss Daisy, Dances with Wolves, Silence of the Lambs, Unforgiven, Schindler's List, Forrest Gump, Braveheart, and The English Patient, Titanic, Shakespeare in Love, American Beauty, Gladiator, Beautiful Mind, Chicago, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, $1 Million Baby, Crash, The Departed, No Country for Old Men, Slumdog Millionaire, The Hurt Locker, The King's Speech, The Artist, Argo, 12 Years a Slave, Birdman, Spotlight, Moonlight, and The Shape of Water. So that's it. From the 1920s to 2017, those are all the Oscar Best Picture winners. So I highly recommend using the method of loci to remember things like vocabulary. I could have done Spanish vocabulary for you, but most of you wouldn't know what it meant anyway, so it wouldn't be as impressive as doing all those. And if I had built a better memory palace, then I probably would have got through that list faster. And you know, in a couple of days, if I keep practicing that, I can get very fast. I've done all the presidents in chronological order. I've done all the states in alphabetical order. And now that I have those and I've run through them, it can be independent of order now because I've put them in a building, each one in a building that I know very well, and I've put in locations in that building and assigned those memories to those places. Then I can just go to those places randomly. So you can ask me, you know, what film came after An American in Paris, and I can tell you right away that it was the greatest show on earth, right? Or you can ask me what came after Patton, and I can tell you it's The French Connection, or any of those things, right? And I can do it forwards and backwards linearly if I want, or I can jump around. So that's really handy when you're trying to acquire new vocabulary, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Like I said, there's lots of videos on the internet. There's a really cool series that Long Beach City College put out that explains not only this technique, but other mnemonic techniques that you can use for different situations to help you remember things. And I'm just finding this journey really fun anyway, because when you build the memory palace, it's like, you know, you feel very present with it. You're actually in there in your imagination. And the fact that, you know, my mind works recalling pictures, and I think most people's minds work recalling pictures so much better than just, you know, flashcards and spaced repetition and trying to bang it into your head. This is like a revelation and a miracle for me. And I know it's a little bit nerdy, and I'm not going to go into any memory championships or anything like that with this skill. But to help me to learn Spanish, I think this is going to be an incredible tool in my toolbox to use this and other mnemonic devices that I can use to recall vocabulary. And then once I get vocabulary words in there, it's, you know, I can use the same building and put phrases on top of those words and remember those phrases. I can just have them at my disposal. And then sooner or later, what the experts say is that when you no longer need a memory palace to remember these things, they just kind of fade away. You know, they become, these words or these memories become second nature to you. They become permanently stored in your long-term memory, and you don't need the palace to remember them anymore. They're just there on the tip of your tongue. However, the palace is still there if you ever need to recall it, and you can't remember it, you can always go back to that space to do it. So I think this is fantastic. And the last thing I'll say about this is also some research has been done by neurologists and other people that have looked at people's brains when they're doing these things, and how many new connections are being made across the corpus callosum from the back and forth, and how this may in fact be a way to stave off things like dementia and Alzheimer's as well, because it's like being in a gym all day. In fact, I feel when I do something like all the Academy Awards, I feel pretty tired by the end of the day, because my mind has been walking through that building. For the last 4 hours, I've been walking through that building over and over again. And my recall is fantastic with it, but it does get kind of tiring when you do things like that. Anyway, I hope the method of loci helps you. go research it on YouTube. You may go down the rabbit hole. There's tons of videos about memory on there, and specifically about this method, the way that different people do it, the way to generate images if you don't feel necessarily creative about them, the way to split up locations so you can use each location 3 to 6 times instead of needing hundreds of locations to do everything like I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna start working on those easier methods coming up. Not easier, but more efficient methods coming up so I can save space in my memory palaces. Because if you do something like the Academy Awards, you need a pretty big building with a lot of spots in it to go through. So anyway, I hope the method of loci helps you. I hope you had fun watching this. Try it out for yourself. I bet you'll be amazed at what you can actually remember, even if you think you have a terrible memory. Anyway, this is Paul, and I'll see you next time.